Welcome back to the RWA Knowledge Zone. Now we have a first for the Dinghy Show. Performance psychologists Chelsea Orme and Suze Burton-Wylie discuss how to manage stress and pressure on the racecourse. Get your questions ready and type them in the questions box, and Chelsea and Suze will be ready to answer them throughout the session.
Hi, I'm Suze Burton-Wylie. I'm a performance psychologist within the British sailing team, and I support the sailors that are campaigning towards Paris 2024. And I'm joined today by Chelsea Orme, a chartered sports psychologist who is completing her PhD within the British sailing team on decision making. And today we're going to discuss decision making under pressure and provide some tips on how to support that. I'll hand over to Chelsea.
Thanks, Suze. So yeah, as Suze says, we'll talk about decision making under pressure, and that will involve a bit about how we make decisions in the moment, and then, as Suze said, going on to tips of then how we can stop the pressure influencing that process. So just first of all, like obviously decision making is massive in sailing. It's a deciding factor at the top level competition, and we're making decisions all the time, like on and off the water, you know, not in terms of just tactics and strategy, but what rig setup you're going to be on, like what time you're going to launch, what equipment you're going to use. All these decisions are coming into play. Today we're going to focus on the tactics and strategy side. So just that on the water decision making. So that could be what you're thinking about strategy before you've even got onto the water, but then obviously on the pre-start, upwind, around the windward mark, downwind, all the places in the race course that you're going to be making decisions and taking in information. So in terms of how decisions are made, it's this continuum of unconscious or no thought to conscious, which is a bit more slow thought. So the unconscious end, a bit more fast, intuitive, and the conscious end a bit more deliberative. So you're making a really deliberate decision. And then this bit in the middle of recognition primes, which is also called pattern recognition, which is not necessarily unconscious, but you've seen situations so many times that it becomes a bit less deliberate than the conscious end. So it sits in that middle. And where decisions are placed on this continuum will depend on the time and the complexity involved. So how complex is the decision and how much time have you got to make it? So if we're thinking about sailing, down the more conscious end, maybe something like the pre-start. You know, there's a lot more time involved, potentially like five minutes if we're talking about the orange flag. But then also there's a lot more complex. There's a lot more things to consider. You've got the other boats going on, you've got the line bias, you've got what's the shift doing, you've got even potentially the committee boat or pin end moving about. You know, a lot more things to take in. So it's maybe more towards that conscious end versus the more unconscious end, such as you tapped when you've been tapped on. You know, otherwise you're going to be in dirty air. It's a bit more, there's not much thought involved, you just do it. So as I said, like where decision lies in this continuum will depend on those things. And yeah, if we talk about the processing information, so if we're more the conscious end, it's obviously a bit more cognitive. So we process the information. That is, you know, what are we seeing? What are we hearing? What are we feeling? So, and not just seeing, hearing, feeling, but actually making sense of that. So if I see a cloud, do I know that means there's more wind on that side of the course? You know, actually paying attention to what that means for our decision making. And all this information on the race course will then influence how you select a decision, and then you do it, so you execute it. Without the execution, there's not much of a decision because it's just a thought process. But that's not to say that you have to do something different. So you don't necessarily have to tack or jam. From the outside, it might look like you're doing nothing and you've not made any decision. But actually, you have gone through this thought process of taking in the information and then selecting the decision just to stay on the same course you're on, just to keep going in a straight line. So it's really important to be aware of like this process that goes behind the decision making, and not just focus on the execution part and what happens, but the thought process that's gone into it. And as I said, it starts with this processing of information and being really aware and being able to pay attention to that stuff. So yeah, as I said, like not just seeing stuff, but actually taking in, and not just listening, but actually, attuning to that information. And this process can be influenced by a lot of things. So that's, fatigue, your skill level, but pressure is a big one. Pressure can influence it quite a lot, especially when it's that more conscious end. That more conscious end, we're more cognitive, and we're supposed a bit more prone to error under pressure. So the pressure will increase our thoughts of worry and our focus on irrelevant things. So when I say irrelevant things, it basically means anything that's not focused on sailing. So you start to have thoughts of maybe your performance, or the result that's going to happen, or your ability to make decisions in the moment, as opposed to focusing on that processing information side, actually what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and what you're feeling. So you might end up with this muddled or fuzzy head analogy, where you've got so much going on in your head and you can't make sense of anything. So that will have an effect on your ability to process that information and then select a decision as a result. You might end up selecting the right decision out of luck, but it just won't be as purposeful probably. So if we think about this in sailing as examples, like if you think about a regatta, you just before you're on the shore, you wait until launch, you're seeing everyone around you getting ready, getting busy, they're looking excited. And you might not be feeling that way. You might be feeling a bit nervous. You might be thoughts of this worry are creeping in. You might start to think about past performances that have either gone wrong, or decisions that you could have been a bit better on, or particular races that didn't particularly go your way. You start to focus on these things instead. And that when you launch, those thoughts might still be there. So instead of focusing on the day ahead and using that time of getting out onto the race course to actually process some information of what the conditions are doing and making a bit of sense of that day, you're more focused on the thoughts of worry and what might happen, the what ifs, which is a bit irrelevant to actually being able to make effective decisions on the race course. And then you get to the start line and those thoughts are still there. You start to constantly go over and over them, and you've not managed to reset yourself and be able to go, right, focusing on sailing now. So that's where mindfulness comes in, is you go from this thoughts of worry, this fuzzy head where you've got so many thoughts going around that aren't really relevant to sailing, to then having a really sailing focused mindset, being present, being in the moment, and taking in the information that's relevant in order to be able to make an effective decision. And I'll pass on to Suze to talk a bit more about this.
Thanks, Chelsea. So yeah, as Chelsea said, there's in terms of the decision-making process, there's a lot of external information that comes in to play a part in kind of that decision-making. And if we've got a busy or a fuzzy head, it's very difficult to be clear on what we need to do. And mindfulness, like Chelsea also said, really helps with that. And the reason why it helps with focus and for performance is that mindfulness in its truest form is the kind of art or skill of being present in the moment. And so if we're present in the moment, it means we're not worrying about things that have already happened. So we're not worrying about a decision that we made yesterday on the water that could potentially impact our day-to-day, or we're not worried about where we need to be in 2 days' time in terms of positions or outcome. If we're mindful, we're being fully present in the moment, which when you apply that to Chelsea's decision-making model that she ran through, is that you're able to take in all of the environmental cues that you need to process it and make that decision. You're able to focus on what is most important. And by being able to be present and focused, you're able to commit to what matters. You can do and commit to what you need to do in that moment for that race, and providing that kind of ability to see what you need to do ahead of you for the race at hand, rather than previous concerns or future worries. And all of this helps you reset more quickly as well. So either you've made the mistake the day before, like I've already mentioned, or you're midway through a race and on the first beat, you made a mistake that you just can't shift. You're still kind of thinking about that mistake. Well, obviously that's going to impact how you perceive or take in the cues for where you are right now and what you need to do in the next few decisions. So if you can practice being mindful, then you have a better ability or to be able to reset more quickly and effectively. And so how do we do this? Well, it's essentially, we call it pressing pause. So we have our thoughts and our feelings, and they, like we've said, can get in the way of what you need to do in the moment. And so if we can press pause and understand what we're thinking, or be aware of what we're thinking and feeling, and notice what is happening around us, then we're practicing being present. The danger is if we allow these thoughts and feelings to just kind of continue in a cycle, then they become almost subconscious and they start to become us. We start to believe them, and it starts to then dictate our race or our day. And so actually by being aware of what pressure does, in terms of, are you nervous? Well, nerves are good, but you have to use them in the right way. So are you nervous? Is your heart racing a little bit more? Are your hands shaking a little bit? Are you feeling a bit sweaty, hot and sweaty because you're nervous about what you're about to do? Well, notice that instead of just allowing that to kind of be taken away, like kind of move away and become you, like notice it, notice what is happening around you, notice how you're feeling, and press pause. And in that moment of pressing pause, you're providing yourself with a choice. Are you going to just let that continue, let those nerves and the thinking and the worry of kind of what happened in the briefing, or what your coach might say or the outcome you feel you need to get, are you going to allow that to just build the pressure, and which is going to impact the information that you can take in for logical decision making? Or are you going to give yourself that second or two and provide yourself with the choice? What do I need to do right now? Let's not worry about what's happened before, is going to happen afterwards. What do I need to take in right now for this race? What is the best thing for me and this race right now? And by doing that, of course, that's resetting and focusing, rather than worrying about everything else that's happening and going on around you. So some fun ways to practice mindfulness. So everything that I've just said in the previous slide can take time. Some people will find it far easier to do than others, and it is a skill that you need to learn in practicing being mindful. And so what better way to do it than informal mindfulness, which is essentially you're not taking time out of your day to practice a mindfulness session. Of course you can do that. You can take 10 minutes or 15 minutes and listen to a mindfulness session. However, informal mindfulness is where you do it in your daily life, so it's not actually taking up any time. And then of course on top of that, you can bring in a little bit of a fun element. So if you like chocolate like myself, then why not practice eating chocolate mindfully? I don't know about you, but the amount of time I eat chocolate, if I'm watching a movie or as a snack, I inhale it because I love it, and then I haven't even really taken it in because I can't even remember eating it. So why not stop and pause and really enjoy that piece of chocolate? So why not break a piece off? And by the way, if you don't like chocolate, it can be something else, like a nice sweet snack or anything that you enjoy to eat. But as per the chocolate, break it off, feel the weight in your hand. What does it feel like? What's the weight? What's the sensation in your fingertips? As you take it up to your mouth, like, what's the weight? What's the sensation of the movement? And then as you pop it into your mouth, how does it taste? Like, don't chew it, don't bite it. But what's the feeling? What's the sensation? Is it smooth? If it's a biscuit or something else, is that rough? And really practice eating chocolate mindfully. And we've done this with sailors in the past, and it's created some really interesting results and feedback, because half the time, or most of the time, they're like, do you know what? We don't even realize we're eating half the time. We just do it subconsciously. And then what you can also do is, practice mindfulness cleaning your teeth. Another thing that we all do every day, twice a day, hopefully. And if, like me, you see it as a task or a chore, and I'm often thinking about other things, why not just stop and think about cleaning your teeth? Like, what do you notice? What's the sensation? Is it a manual toothbrush or an electric toothbrush? What does the toothpaste taste like in your mouth? You know, practice being mindful. And of course, these are fun bits to practice at home. And then what we can do is we can take that onto the water and apply it to with a sailing lens as well. And so this is where we might want to be a little bit more serious, or really notice what we're experiencing on the water. But when you go out onto the water, whether it be in a training session or on a regatta, and I appreciate for a lot of us at the moment it's very difficult due to COVID to get out on the water, but when you do get out on the water, what are you seeing? What are you experiencing? What are you feeling? You know, are you fully present, or are you thinking about the briefing, or are you thinking about what needs to happen with some boat maintenance tomorrow? But let's start to think about the wind shifts. What are you seeing with the weather? What are you seeing with the tide? What are you seeing with other boats? You know, if it's your training partners or if it's other boats that you're racing against, you know, are you noticing them? Are you noticing what they're doing? What can you learn from them? Can you learn from what you see from them? Also, like, where's the line bias? You know, do you know which side of the start line you need to be at, especially for your race and for your strategy and your tactics? And then finally, what are the clouds doing? Chelsea mentioned the clouds earlier. If you're seeing the clouds, how are you processing that information? What do you need to do with it? So by practicing at home, hopefully you can then start to practice on the water and apply this to sailing. Get your head out of the boat. What are you seeing? What are you feeling? What do you need to be aware of and to understand? And of course, by doing this, it helps you to really focus in the moment. So the pressure is still there, but it's not consuming you and it's not becoming all encompassing. The pressure is there, but you're still focused.
And as Suze and as we said at the start, like, you're making decisions all the time, you know, which means that you can press pause at any time. These thoughts of distracting thoughts will creep in at any part of your training session or any part of your race. And that's okay. But as Sue said, it's being able to press that pause, being aware of everything around you, and then being able to reset. But that pause could be at the start when you've got a bit more time, but it also could be when you're a bit short of time. You know, if you're on the upwind or you're going around the mark or the downwind, you don't have to physically stop. You're just doing that mental pause and being a bit more aware of what you're seeing and listening and feeling, but actually paying attention to that. As Sue said, we often inhale stuff when we eat things or look out a window and don't even know what we're looking at. But actually, you know, being able to pay attention in that moment. And if we bring this back to the model, it comes back to that processing and the information part, you know, really paying attention to that. Are we listening? Are we seeing? Are we able to make sense of that information? You know, what are we thinking about when we're looking at those things? What are we thinking about when we're hearing those things? What are we thinking about when we're feeling what we feel in the boat? You know, and then how does that influence then how we select a decision from that? So being really aware of this process and being really mindful of, you know, how in the moment you are versus thinking about other things that might be a bit more relevant.
And then finally, we'll just look at some key takeaways that hopefully you can take with you off the session today and start to practice. So first and foremost, pressure. And like we've already said, pressure in sport is inevitable. And they, you know, we can look at it as it's actually pressure is a privilege. And so we want to experience pressure really, but we want to experience it in the right way. If we don't experience pressure in the right way, then it can disrupt our thoughts and influence our decision making and our decision making process. And so ways to kind of try and I suppose you see pressure and use pressure in the right way is by practicing mindfulness and by practicing being present in the moment. And if we can do that, if we can press pause, then we're allowing ourselves that space to reset and put the focus back on the sailing and the thought processes and the environmental cues that we need to take in to make those decisions. And then and with that, practice mindfulness. Like I said, it can take a while. It is a skill. Practice it off the water first as a bit of fun, and then start to apply that lens of practicing on the water. Hopefully you can get out on the water soon and really start to notice what it is that you experience when you get out in your boat and out on the water.
And just adding to that, Suze, I think that one of the key things as well is just constantly thinking, like, when you're looking at stuff, are you paying attention?
Yeah. Thanks, Chelsea. So thank you for your time today. Hopefully you found the session useful, and hopefully you can take some of the takeaways away with you and start to apply that to your sailing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to Chelsea and Suze for that session. There's still lots more coming up here in the Knowledge Zone, including Niall Myant giving tips on coaching yourself to success, and British sailing team meteorologist Simon Rowell. He'll be sharing his knowledge on how to use a forecast on the water.